next film that I have on my list, Jason, is one we saw together. It's called Milius.
Oh, yes.
About the director, John Milius, who is a name I think most people have heard. I don't know if they realize how big he is.
His influence in Hollywood.
Yeah. It's directed by two guys named Zach Knudsen and Joey Figueroa. These guys are generally DVD bonus feature producers. Like, that's their day job.
And you could get that sense.
Yeah, yeah. But what's so fast, like, the stories about him are one thing. The people telling the stories is what really sells this as something worth seeing. So you've got people like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Francis Ford Coppola, and Scorsese talking about how they idolize this guy, and they just have untold numbers of stories about this one guy.
Well, Spielberg and Lucas went to school with him at USC, so that was sort of their way of being introduced to this bigger than life character.
Yeah.
So yeah, I liked it. I think you probably liked it a lot more than I did. The movie certainly has flair. I didn't realize that those guys were special features producers, but it so makes sense now that when you say that, because it has this flair to it. It's very playful with photos and video clips and stuff like that. Of course, John Milius, the guy that did Red Dawn, Conan the Barbarian.
He wrote Apocalypse
Now, which is just ridiculous. Has made a bunch of scripts that are like well known that have never been actually filmed. I was trying to think of an easy way of explaining this movie to people, to sort of explain it's not a distaste for it, but just sort of like, I was like, this is what I came up with. It felt like an appetizer to what could have been a full meal. Because there's things that I know about John Milius that didn't even touch on. His role in the UFC. He helped start the UFC. He came up with the idea of the octagon that they fight in.
Wow.
Like, he was like, don't make this in a square, put this in an octagon. It'd be way more fascinating. It's like, I knew that going into the movie, and they didn't get into that. His influence on the directors, why didn't they talk about the John Milner character in American Graffiti? Based on John Milius. What about Walter from Big Lebowski?
Yeah.
That was the reason why I showed up, because I know Walter is John Milius in a way.
Yeah.
They don't even talk about that. And I don't know if maybe it's because they didn't get access to these people.
Possibly.
They couldn't get the rights to clips. I don't know. Because, I mean, that's the Coen brothers, obviously. And they're not even they're not even mentioned.
Yeah.
Then we go to find out that he does certain things, like he helped Spielberg flesh out the Jaws.
He wrote the
monologue
speech from Jaws.
Yeah.
The speech, the USS Indianapolis speech. Like, that's unreal.
One of the most famous cinematic speeches in history.
Yeah.
And Spielberg, I mean, that wasn't even in the book or the screenplay. And Spielberg was like, we need more of this. And it's like this brilliant scene. So I liked it, but I thought, I mean, like I said, this guy's heavily involved in things, and it just felt like they were holding back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I liked it a lot. I liked finding out about the person. I don't know if the documentary was structured as well as I would have liked. It wasn't as engaging as I thought it would be, even though the individual, John Milius, is, I loved hearing about him. I loved the experience of learning about him. I don't know if it had been about anyone else, if this would have been like a great documentary.
And there's more. That's the thing. There's just so much more stuff about the guy that they could have gone into. I mean, the movie could have been an hour longer, and I would have been fine sitting there watching it. And then I just knew, like, as I'm watching it, I'm like, there's stuff they're not telling me. Like, I just got that feeling, and then I go and double check, and it was totally true. There were just things about the guy that I thought I knew that they didn't even touch on. It's like, well, if I know about this, there's a good chance many other people aren't, because, I mean, I did my research, and I just know of him because of the Spielberg and Lucas references.
Yeah.
There was the Jaws thing I had no idea about.
Yeah.
So there was things I also learned. So if you're a fan of film, you're going to figure out that this guy has connections to everything, like just a crazy amount of things, because obviously the influences of those directors, and there's some that we didn't even mention, are pretty wide.
Yeah.
And this, and because it was funny, you asked me, like, is he still alive? And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's still alive. And of course, I double checked, and he is. He's alive, but he's had some issues, health issues that have really sort of knocked him down a notch.
Yeah.
And they do go in and explain that, which I thought kind of killed the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
But at least they didn't start the movie with that. It kind of is towards the trail end of the movie, which I appreciated. They didn't like get me really sad about this guy that's, having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But again, I was just kind of like, do we need this to explain John Milius? I don't think so. There was just some things that I would have extracted and put other things in for, but I thought it was okay.
Okay. Yeah, I would say it's sort of in the bottom half of films that I watched during the festival, but I still, they give you the audience award ballots. I didn't rate anything lower than a 4 that I actually got to rate. There was a couple that I had to, the last day I didn't get to rate anything because they'd already tallied them.
Yeah.
But
and there was nothing else playing, at least that I can see, that would have distracted me.
Yeah.
This was like you and I just kind of mutually agreed to go see this one. And it's good. There's things I learned about it, and it makes me want to just go watch more of his stuff.
Yeah.
Like I want to watch Apocalypse Now again, knowing that this one guy was fully responsible for it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Of course, because he based that all off of Heart of Darkness, and nobody could do it.
Yeah.
He somehow was the guy that did it, probably like that. He probably wrote it in like 4 days or something. So
yeah.
And George Hamilton's in it too, which I didn't realize there was a George Hamilton connection, but there is.
Yeah.
And George Hamilton has probably one of the funniest stories in the movie. So there you go.
A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.